Hello students, welcome to the answer writing program. Today we are going to discuss three questions on the topic important aspects of the governance and e-governance. So let's start with the questions. Let's see the three questions in just a generic format. The first question is related to transparency and accountability and its linkage with the public trust and effective policy implementation. The second question is related to e-governance initiative and its connection with the public service delivery. The third question is related to current affair as well as the governance aspect, the G20 and its evolution into G21, and how this African Union inclusion in the G20 changes the global governance, how this transformation changes the global governance. Okay, so let's start with the discussion. The first question says that transparency and accountability are fundamental principles in governance which are vital for promoting public trust and effective policy implementation. See, in the governance questions, the main focus should be on the vocabulary part, how and where we are using the keywords, especially with respect to the second ARC, the speeches from the Honorable Prime Minister, the speeches from the President, Vice President, the famous personalities, whatever they say with respect to governance plays a key role in this answers, especially in the governance part. Okay. So this question says about the transparency and accountability and its role in the public trust and effective policy implementation. Let's see the question what it says. The question is saying that the transparency and accountable are fundamental. Why only these are fundamental means there are some other core pillars or the principles of the governance as well. Like we know that there are 8 pillars of the good governance: accountable, transparent, responsive, equitable and inclusive, effective and efficient, rule of law, participatory and consensus orientation. What the question is demanding from us is this perspective only, that yes, the accountability and the transparency plays a major role in building public trust and in effective policy implementation. So this is the question, we have to write this thing, how. So, and the keyword is discuss. So we have to tell how transparency and accountability plays a major role and what are some challenges or the constraint in achieving the goal of transparency and accountability in the governance aspect. So this is a 10 marker question, and 10 marker question mostly consists of 2 parts only. In conclusion, you can write the summary of the answer or you can write some way forward, whatever suits you the best. So in this question, in all the questions, we will follow the same pattern. We'll start with the introduction. We'll deal with the body. In body, there will be the multiple parts. In the then conclusion, then it will end the answer. Okay. So introduction. In introduction, what we can do is we can write some case study with respect to some municipality, with respect to some states or anywhere where the transparency and the accountability helps in promoting the public trust. Or we can write the speech, as I have already told you, that the PM in his speech said, and it shows the commitment of the government. What it tells? सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास, सबका प्रयास. What it means? सबका साथ is inclusivity. सबका विकास is holistic development or the inclusive development. सबका विश्वास is trust-based governance. And सबका प्रयास is collaborative or cooperative governance, where the people will give the feedback to the government and the government inculcate that feedback in the policy designing, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and this whole policy cycle will be done. So what you can write in the introduction, that PM in his speech said that and shows its commitment by saying that सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास, सबका प्रयास it shows the dedication of the government for all these aspects which promotes the public trust and effective policy implementation. With this, you can include the current affair, the current happenings, the famous phrases from the government speeches, and you can link with how these things help in achieving this thing, public trust and effective policy implementation. So this will be the best introduction you can start. Okay, so next comes the main body. So we have to tell about how the transparency and accountability helps in promoting public trust and effective policy implementation. Before going deep into this, that how does this work, we should know that there are 8 pillars of the governance. There are other pillars as well except this accountability and transparency, which are required for the good governance. But these specifically are necessary or the vital for public trust and effective policy implementation. So the question is predominantly asking about the transparency and accountability. What happens when government is transparent? Transparent means the government is sharing the information with respect to the actions, the policies, the decisions, what the government is taking. So the government is increasing the fairness in the governmental actions. When everything is revealed or shared with the public, then public will not have any fear or any have the will have the dilemma that okay, the government is not doing well. When everything is fair and shared with the public, then it helps in building the public trust. What happens with the transparency? See, transparency has 2 aspects. One is with respect to the government point of view, means government is sharing the information with the public, means now the people, the public have the access to the government's actions, the government decisions, government policies. It is more fair now. Everything is transparent. So this promotes the trust in the public. When the government shares their action, shares their policies, decisions. The second aspect of the transparency is that transparent government incorporates the feedback of the people. The government listens to the concern of the people, and when the people are being heard by the government, they feel more empowered. Now that all the governance process is more participatory process, then now the governance is more collaborative. It is not just one side centralized government that yes, government is taking actions and it is just forcing or pressurizing on the people. No, it is not like that. So from the citizen point of view, collaborative plus participative. See, you have to be more focused on these keywords. Okay. So this is how transparency works in building the public public trust. The next one is honesty, integrity, means ethical conduct at both the organizational level and at individual level. And when the government officials or the public officials at the individual level and as the institution both shows the commitment, shows the honesty, integrity in their working, then public also think that government has no intentions to hide anything. It means everything is transparent. Then public trust will be boosted, will be generated in a good manner. Okay, so this way transparency boosts the public trust. Now comes with the accountability. Again, accountability has 2 aspects, internal accountability and external accountability. Internal accountability, like as in the case of RTI, the law itself tells about that you have to, means public officials have to reveal the information within prescribed limit like 30 days. If that public official is not capable to deliver or disclose the information, then he has to give the explanation or maybe he will be penalized. So this is internal accountability. So means government is responsible for their action, and government if proactively disclosing the information, it means there are very less chances of the corruption to take place. Malpractices or the corrupt practices will not take place, or even if they take place, then because it is now transparent, because now government is accountable to the people, then people will see or exploit the all the data which is there in the public and will reveal the malpractices. So both ways it works. Now comes the external accountability, like external accountable agencies, like external agencies which do the audits of the governmental agencies, like in the case of CAG, and multiple civil society is the external agency, pressure groups are the external agencies. So if the audit is being happened, so again corruption can be revealed, malpractices will be revealed, and when the government knows that government means they are under the scrutiny, there are very less chances to do the malpractices. So again, when less corruption is there and where corruption is not there, the public trust will be boosted. Okay, so this way transparency and accountability generates or promotes the public trust. Now comes the second aspect of the effective policy implementation. How accountability and transparency, effective policy implementation, how this happens, we have to find out this, we have to write. Okay, so now what happens, accountability and transparency. Okay, before going into this, let's see what is the policy cycle, because we are talking about the effective policy implementation. No, what is policy cycle? We design or formulate the policy, means government implement the policy, then it monitor that how it is working, then this loop is feedback loop, and this is evaluation. Okay, so this is policy cycle. And in the good governance, when the governance is transparent and accountable to the people, what people can do or the public can do, they can give feedback that whatever the government is doing, it is good, it is not good, but we as a government, as a public or the citizen, we demand this. So they can tell that these are the malpractices going on, this is the demand, this is the target audience, this is not happening in a good manner, this is what is lacking, this is what we require. So all the feedbacks by the civil society, by the vibrant civil society, everything will be inculcated here or here. So next time the policy maker will formulate the policy in a very dedicated manner. So they will tell what will be the effective, they will tell effectively the target beneficiaries, they will better allocate the resources, and there will be better public service delivery. So this way the policy implementation would be better. So this was completed the first body part. Let's see the second one, because the keyword is discuss. So we have to tell. See, there are again the two aspects of this question. As the question is saying, the transparency and accountability are fundamental. So because the question is discussed, what you can do is, okay, transparency and accountable are vital part, but there are some other parts like consensus building, effective implementation, participatory governance, responsible government. These are also very necessary part for the good governance, and you can write some few points on that. And other aspect of this discuss would be, you can write some challenges or the constraints in achieving the goal of transparency and accountability. What are these transparency and accountability flaws or the challenges or the constraints? See, again there are the multiple approaches. You can write in the supply side and the demand side issue, like at the supply side what government is lacking, at the demand side what customer or the citizen or the public official is lacking. You can do at the multiple layers. What we can see at the other approaches, by the multiple layering approach. See, why transparency and accountability have some challenges, why any government cannot able to fulfill this transparency and accountability aspects, because there are some challenges in achieving those aspects of good governance. First challenge is, see, we will look at the legal or the policy level, legal or the law level. Then we will look at the policy level. Then we will see at the institutional level what is lacking. Then we will see at the governmental level what is lacking. Then we will look at the citizen level. Why we are not able to achieve this transparency and accountability for promoting the good governance. See, legal and the law. What is this? See, government is initiating the different laws like RTI for the good governance, for the more transparent and the open government. But again, at the same time, there are other laws as well, like Official Secrets Act, which is in conflicting or the contradicting with RTI. So public officials or the government, what they can do, they misuse this OSA with respect to the RTI. So the legal laws means there are the multiplicity or the laws which are in conflicting or the contradicting with each other. So this is the major loophole, we can say, or the challenge in the effective implementation of the transparency aspect. Then comes as a policy level. So what exactly the policy challenges are? Again, policy making and the policy implementation. Policy making means government, if it is not taking the feedback from the people, it means that policy is a flawed policy. Why Citizen Charter was totally a failure? Because the bureaucrats at the very central level in the very big governmental buildings, they are sitting without taking consultation from the public that what actually they require, what actually they need. They are formulating the Citizen Charter. So this is a flawed policy, no? So when the citizens' participation is not there, then governmental, that policy making is a flawed policy. Then comes the policy implementation. Policy implementation, we know one phrase, 15 paisa conundrum or the 15 paisa riddle. Our honorable Prime Minister in 1990s, he said that when the government releases 1 rupee, the exact or the actual beneficiary only gets 15 paisa. So the implementation is flawed. Means whatever the finances are released at the central level, it is not getting till the last beneficiary. So there are the policy implementation issues. Next come the institution. Institution means institution as a whole, like RTI. RTI as an institution. How this is challenging? The nodal agency like CICs, ICs, SICs, they are weak. How they are weak? They do not have much power. I'm not exactly saying with respect to RTI and not getting deep into this, but as an institution, they are not have the more powers, their security, their tenure, their conditions, their service tenure. As an agency, they cannot perform well. They do not have incentives to that. So as an institutions, they do not have human resources. As an institution, they do not have the financial or the technological capabilities or the infrastructure with which help they can perform better. Next comes the governmental challenges. Governmental challenges means the political will or the administrative will, it is not there to implement the transparency or the accountability in their governance aspect. Why? See, there is a power asymmetry between the bureaucrats who is handling the government and the people, because people are less they do not know about their rights, they are unaware of their rights. So the bureaucrats at the higher level and the people at this level, there is a very asymmetric power distribution. So this bureaucrat, they do not want to share their power between themselves and the people. They do not have the administrative will. So first is in the governmental issues, this is there. Then again, government has some infrastructural challenges. Then comes the citizen issues. Citizens are not aware of their right, that they can demand the transparent, the open communication with the government. They, even if they are aware, like, okay, there are some schemes which are there for me to get the benefits from that scheme. Even if I know that, but I do not have the capabilities to use that. Like, I do not have the phone, I do not have the information about how to access that. Okay, so the citizen is disempowered in this case. So you can write all these points in the second part, means constraints to the transparency and accountability. So this completes the body. Now comes to the conclusion. See, everything almost we have covered in the major this question part. So what we can write in the conclusion is that yes, the government is moving from the secrecy based model to the trust based model. Or we can write that now the beneficiary or the participant, they are not just now the passive recipient of the government services. Instead, they are now acting as a stakeholder. They are now participating actively in the governance process. Or you can write about the bureaucratic behavior, like from the chalta hai attitude, now they are moving towards the seva bhava attitude. So this completes our answer number 1. Okay, so let's move on to the second question. You can go through the model answer as well. It is covered in the very holistic ways, all the points which we discussed, like challenges, everything we have discussed. Okay, you can just go through the model answer. Let's see the second question. Second question is, how can e-governance initiatives positively impact the quality of public service delivery in India? There are two keywords, the public service delivery and the e-governance initiatives. Okay, and we have to highlight the limitations as well. See, e-governance initiative. Before getting into the e-governance, what we need to know that how the good governance or the governance aspect deals with the public service delivery. How this works? Public service delivery means the delivery of the public services in a efficient manner. Qualitative, because the word is qualitative. In a qualitative manner, in a timely manner, delivery of the goods and services in efficient and effectively. When the public officials have the capacity to deliver public services, when we do the performance analysis of public officials, then only we can tell that okay, this is qualitative public service delivery, and all these aspects are good governance aspect, because we are checking the quality, the timeliness, the effectiveness, the public officials capacity building, the performance analysis. Now the question is asking that how e-governance is positively impacting public service delivery. Now what we see around us as well, that e-governance changes the scenario. It increases the speediness of the public service delivery. It increases the accessibility. It increases the affordability of the public service delivery. So this way you have to deal this question. For this question you must need how this works, then only you will be able to write how e-governance enhances the quality, how it enhances the timeliness delivery of this, how e-governance helps in increasing the efficiency, how e-governance checks on the performance of the public officials, the monitoring, the evaluation of the policies. So this is the basic question demand. This was the basic requirement to deal this answer. Now comes to the introduction. See, the question is asking about the e-governance initiative, and the public service delivery means the good governance, or the public service delivery is the part of good governance only. Now what you can do, again you can write the e-governance definition in the introduction. You can write the definition according to the second ARC, that e-governance is associated with carrying out the functions and achieving the results of governance via ICT, information and communication technology. You can also write the introduction with respect to the World Bank definition, that use of ICT by the governmental agencies that have the ability to transform relationship with the citizen, with the business and the other arms of the government. Or you can make use of the current affair, that you can write some speeches or some phrases from any respectable personality. Like here we are writing PM Modi's speech. What he said, e-governance is not only about the electronic governance, it is about the easy governance, effective governance and economic governance. Okay, so this will help you fetching good marks. So this completes the introduction. Now comes to the body part. Body part is asking, we have to connect that, okay, this is e-government initiative and this is how it is impacting quality of public service delivery. We have to make the connection. Even if you do not know about this question, you can write, you can think of what are the e-governmental initiatives. First is, whatever strikes in our mind is Digital India, DigiLocker, CoWIN app, and multiple more like Umang app, Pragati portal, and various other, Jam Trinity, multiple more, many more are there. So just we have to link with how it is enhancing the public service delivery. Okay, so what you can do is you can write the multiple layering, like, or the multiple dimensions where the government is showing or is delivering the public services or the goods. First is welfare, so you can connect with the DBT. Again, DBT, earlier without the e-governance, without the advent of the e-governance, what was happening? So much leakages were there. Again, 15 paisa conundrum was there. So now with the advent of the DBT, leakages are less, corruption are less. Now whatever the government is releasing, approximately exact amount is what beneficiary is getting. With respect to health, what government has done, as we have seen in the case of COVID, CoWIN portal was there. It optimized the vaccination process. Then with respect to education, Swayam app, now anyone can access or afford the education anywhere in any remote corner of the world through the Swayam portal. Then financial inclusion, what e-governance has done, Jam Trinity, Jan Dhan Yojana, Aadhaar and mobile, how this has helped in just speedy process, fast enough, the smoothen up the different governance processes. Next comes the grievance redressal, CP grams. Earlier we used to stay stand in the long queues for the public service deliveries, like to get the ration card, to get the driving license, to get the RTO number from the RTO office, to complaint for that matter. Now just just a single click on this portal, we can put our grievances. What other domains you can see? We can just in the single click, we can report to the Delhi police for any theft issue. For the monitoring and evaluation, Pragati portal is there. Pragati portal where the PM can connect directly with the district collectors and ask about the various schemes, how these are performing, how this is not performing good, what are the issues. Earlier they used to pass the files to the central authority, like there are the multiple barriers. Now they are directly getting connected. So the monitoring and the implementation and the evaluation process has very smoothened out just because of e-governance initiative. See, today we are connecting, you are seeing this online and we are connecting. This is also the result of e-governance. Okay, next comes the second part is the limitation of such initiatives, limitations with e-governance. Again, we can write according to the what stakeholder point of view. From the governmental point of view, what are the limitations in providing the e-governance? Like infrastructural issues are there, financial resources, physical infrastructure is not there. Then the bureaucratic lethargy is there. Again, this is a good keyword, bureaucratic lethargy. Then public officials, they are very resistant to change. They are old age people, they just want to write on the paper and they do not want to use the digital world accessories. With respect to the citizen point of view, still there is a digital divide, rural versus digital divide, rural versus urban, women versus men. This is also the gender disparity in accessibility or affordability of digital devices, digital literacy, etc. So these are the limitations from the citizen point of view. Also, e-governance sometimes make the vulnerable section more vulnerable. Like in the case of the Manrega, although maybe you have seen in the that web series Sandeep Bhaiya, in the first episode itself, it has shown that there are some daily wagers and there is one contractor, and the contractor takes the cell phones of all the daily wagers. Government is sending money or the daily wages to their cell phones, but the government, now the contractor has all the people's cell phone. What the contractor is doing, he is transferring money from the all cell phones or the mobile phones to his phone, and he is paying less cash in hand. So again, there are some loopholes, but yes, e-governance has leveraged the use of digitalization, LPG reforms, everything, and it has going very good in this particular direction. Obviously, this technology is new. We have to reap the benefits with time. We will deal with the loopholes or the lacunas or the challenges, constraints with time only. Okay, you can also write in the limitations about the daily wages, the biometric system, that due to the daily wage, this biometric doesn't work, so it makes vulnerable section more vulnerable. So there are multiple limitations as well to this e-governance aspect. In conclusion, what you can write some good case study. Like in the case of Estonia, it is the first digitized society in spirit, where 99% of the government service delivery are done via e-governance. More transparent, more accountable, fast, cost effective, everything. So you can write this case study in the conclusion, or you can summarize your answer as well. Okay, so let's see the next question. We'll move on to the third one. So this question is mostly about that these are the various services like ration card at the common service center, RTI income tax portal, and how this is improving the public service delivery. So everything we have already discussed. These are the challenges. Next, come to the third question. In the recent international developments, the G20 has evolved into G21, with the India's pivotal role in facilitating the inclusion of African Union in global discussions. In the light of this, elucidate means you have to clarify or you have to explain the significance of this transformation for the global governance. Okay, so first you need to know about what is this transformation. The question is asking about the significance of this transformation, but first of all you should know what is this transformation, no? So this we have to be aware of. What is this transformation? Earlier, G20 consists of mostly the rich countries or the developed countries, or mostly the north countries. But with the inclusion of African Union, which is the union of 55 African countries, now this inclusion of South continent into the G20, this is the transformation. And what is this transformation? From the domination of the North, from the domination or the monopoly of the North, now it is transforming to the collaboration or the participation of North and South. Okay, this is the transformation. Now what is transforming? The domination of the North is transforming the governance. In the governance aspect, the domination is changing, is losing power of the North to the North plus South. So we have to write about the significance of this transformation. Okay, so what you can write in the introduction? We can write in the introduction that the inclusion of the African Union in the G20 corrected the skewed representation that G20 was earlier criticized for, particularly due to the underrepresentation of the African nations. Okay, or you can write something about G20 as well. You can write about the African Union as well, or you can write about the India's pivotal role as well, which we have written in conclusion, that our Foreign Secretary Vinay Mohan Kwatra has said that India has an important role in finding the solutions for the global problems. India is the voice of the global south. This is the major phrase going on. So India's effort in the inclusion of African Union in G20 shows that India is in line with its vision. Okay, and with this, India is strengthening its image as Vishwaguru. You can also write in introduction, you can write this in conclusion, you can write this in introduction, whatever suits you the best. Okay, so now let's come to the main body part. We have to tell about the significance of this transformation for the global governance. Dominance of the North, or the dominance of the few countries in the G20 saying, has transformed into the collaborative or the participatory approach of the North and South. What is this significance? It signifies that it has strengthened the voice of the global South. Okay. Now, the African nations, the global South, India also, major other countries and the African countries, 55 countries in the African nation, in the African continent, they can raise their issues, they can raise their voice, they can do the participation in the global governance process now. Next is global decision making. Again, earlier dominated by a few, now participatory and collaborative approach is there. Next is global issues. As Mr. Jaishankar has said that Europe's problem is the world's problem, but world's problem is not Europe's problem. So there are multiple issues. If anybody will be dominated by the few rich countries, they cannot see the exact issues at the ground level in the other countries. So if the ground level or the diverse participation is there in the global cooperation, they can raise their voices, they can raise their concerns with respect to climate change, with respect to sustainable development, with respect to terrorism, everything, they can raise their voices. As economic cooperation, obviously, they can raise their voices at the global level. So the global issues have the global solution that requires the global governance. We cannot solve the issues of the African nation, like of poverty, like of threats to the peace and security, like of the political unrest, of the terrorism, of the population boost, because Africa is a continent where population will be boomed out. So we have to consider, obviously, African nations now consist of 1.3, approximately 3 billion population. So if we do not take these people into the global governance, then the economic, social, political governance will not be inclusive or the sustainable governance. Okay. Next comes the economic cooperation. Again, the economic cooperation cannot be sustainable if we exclude the whole of the continent. Next is address the global crisis, requires a global cooperation and the coordinated efforts. Next comes the reformed multilateralism. This is important point. See, African Union's inclusion shows it is the example that G20 is first time has amended this, means has changed or has enlarged its boundaries. Means earlier, from the very making of this or the establishing of this G20 as an institution, it has not included anybody till this date. Now the African Union is the first one to get it included. So there are reforms in the multilateral bodies as well. It means that multilateral institutions can be strengthened and made more inclusive to tackle the issues faced by the countries. So conclusion, though, we have already discussed that you can write about the summary, you can write about the G20 correctness, about the skewed representation of the African nation, or you can write some famous quotes as well. And you can write about how this transformation helps in boosting the good governance in the global sphere. Okay, so this was the discussion from my side. Thank you and have a nice day.